Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast, Season 5. This podcast is for and about people getting ready for their first ever pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, Camino guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. This episode releases on Tuesday, December 10th. We have 4 Tuesdays left in 2024 and 4 episodes left in this season of the podcast. That timing feels perfect for me to share with you something I do every December to wrap up the year. In this episode and the next 3, I'm going to share with you my 4-step end-of-year practice in the hopes that you will find value in ending the year strong and setting a solid foundation for the new year, which I am not so secretly hoping will be the year of your first Camino pilgrimage. Hey, this is Nancy, and I want to say thank you to all my listeners for sharing the year with me. I have heard from many of you that this podcast series has been instrumental in helping you prepare for your first Camino, and it has provided some much-needed inspiration to encourage you to take on this big journey. My guests in Season 5 have certainly inspired me to keep on seeking out and sharing Camino stories, both from pilgrims getting ready for their first ever pilgrimages and from pilgrims who have already walked one of the trails. So you can expect more of that in Season 6, which will begin in late January or early February. Yes, I am going to be taking a break from producing the podcast to work on some things. I'm not sure what those things are yet, but you will hear all about it in the next season of the podcast. If you don't want to wait that long, if you would like to be the first to know when I have something new coming out, you're welcome to sign up for my email newsletter list. Every Friday, I send out an email to my list with Camino-related content, such as tips for planning and preparing for the Camino, current Camino events, stories from my personal experience, and special offers for the Getting Started programs I offer. When you sign up for my email list, you also get a free copy of my top 10 Camino tips that don't usually show up on the top 10 lists, and my Camino planning roadmap. The roadmap answers the big picture level questions of where do I start, as in where do I start planning for something like a pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. The link to get your top 10 Camino tips and roadmap and to get on my email list is in the show notes. You can also go to my website, thecaminoexperience.com, and sign up there. And another reason to swing by my website, starting on Friday, December 13th, 2024, I will be taking 20% off my Camino Frances Getting Started audio guide. That promotion will go through Boxing Day, which is Thursday, December 26th. I think of this as my 12 days of Christmas, only it'll go on for 14 days. Look for the link on the homepage of my website, or look for the audio guide option on the main menu. Again, that's thecaminoexperience.com. Okay, let's get going with my year-end process. There are actually a bunch of steps to the practice, but I'm going to distill them down to 3 episodes. Years ago, like maybe 25 years ago, a friend passed on a book that rearranged my year-end focus, and that is where much of this comes from. The book is called Your Best Year Yet, and it's by Ginny S. Ditzler. I will be adapting some of the material from the book in the next 3 episodes. If you want the whole story, you may want to pick up a copy of the book from your local library or bookstore. Again, it's Your Best Year Yet by Ginny S. Ditzler, Ditzler. The practice involves reviewing the current year and setting goals for the next year. Pretty standard, right? Yes, but we are going to be focusing our efforts on making your dream of walking the Camino a reality. Then on December 30th, I'll wrap up season 5 and the year by sharing my favorite tradition of the year. Yes, December 30th is a Monday, not a Tuesday. The final episode of this season of the podcast will come out one day earlier than usual, so you'll have an extra day to complete this final tradition of mine, since it has to be done by midnight on December 31st. Now, what if you're listening to this episode long after its release date? What if it's not December and you're not counting down to the new year? No problem. You can use this process at any time throughout the year, at any time when you want a reset of sorts, when you want to wrap up one block of time and consciously start another stage or phase of your life. For example, you can use this process in the middle of the year or at your favorite holiday. You could use it as your birthday approaches and count that special day as the first day of your next year. Whenever you use this process, I hope it will provide you with some support and inspiration to turn your dreams into reality. But we do have to take the first few steps, so let's get going. To get us started, you'll need a place to capture your thoughts. I highly recommend using paper and pen for this rather than an electronic device. Personally, I like to use printer paper so that as I go, I can spread out the pages and easily refer back to them. That allows me to cross-reference my notes to be sure I haven't missed anything, and most importantly, to see all the pages at the same time, which means I also write on only one side of the paper. You're going to be answering 5 different questions, so you will need at least 5 pieces of paper. I would have more on hand, though, as some of your answers may go longer than one page. We will start with the first question in this episode, and we will be starting on a high note. This first question invites you to reminisce on what went well this year, your accomplishments, things you feel good about. What are you most proud of? What made you smile, or dance, or cheer this year? You can go about answering this question and making your list a couple of ways. One, you could just grab a piece of paper and start writing, dropping everything you can think of onto the page, like you would do in a brainstorming session. Or you could do it by categories or themes. For example, you could do a page for professional or work accomplishments and a page for personal successes. Personal accomplishments could be broken down further into categories like family, relationships, friendships, finances, volunteer roles, and spiritual or personal growth. At this point, you may be wondering, what counts as an accomplishment? See, usually when we think of accomplishments, we think of big things. For example, if you've already walked the Camino, that would certainly go on this list. Starting a business, or having a child, or taking the family on vacation, or writing a book, all would be obvious wins and would go on the accomplishments list. But it's more than that. We are looking for things you did this year that you feel good about. My obvious win in my work life this year has been relaunching my Camino experience groups. I led 2 groups from Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port this year, with 9 pilgrims in my May group and 10 in my September group. I also produced the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast and released 37 episodes this year. In total, the 94 episodes I've produced in the last 2 or so years have been downloaded more than 265,000 times. Those are all things I'm really pleased with and proud of. What kind of things would make your list? As an example, you might want to take note of how much money you earned this year, especially if it was an increase over last year. Did you get a promotion or a better job? Did you quit your job to go walk the Camino? That is a huge, bold, brave step and definitely goes on the accomplishment list. If you're planning for the Camino next year, what have you accomplished in the planning process? Have you assembled your gear, booked your flights, bravely shared your plans with your friends and family, risking their disapproval or maybe bewilderment? Put those on the accomplishment list. What have you created this year? Did you do some writing, or did you record some music or create some art? Those all go on your accomplishments list. What new friendships or relationships have you formed this year? How have your current relationships grown and flourished? These are all wins. Do you volunteer? I'd love to volunteer at my church, so I counted up how much time I gave this year. Do you give money to a charity or nonprofit organization to help out people in need? Or do you give to your church? I also tithe on my income, so I checked with our finance manager to find out how much I gave this year, so I know and can own that number. Have you given your time or money this year? What have you learned this year? Did you take any classes or workshops? What new skills have you acquired? Or what have you mastered that you used to be only so-so at? How about your health? Did you lose weight? Get in shape? Run a marathon or a 5K? At this point, you may be thinking that you have precious little to put on your accomplishment list. You may even be making a mental list of everything that has gone wrong this year. I want you to stop that now. I know it's hard to stop, but at least put it on hold for now. We will look at regrets and disappointments in the next episode. Today, we are focusing on the good stuff, the things you are proud of and happy with. If you're having trouble coming up with things for your list, I want you to know I understand how that feels. I've been in that place too. The year 2014, for example. That year, I very nearly skipped my year-end practice because it was such a lousy year. My list of accomplishments that year didn't even fill half a page. And when I did my regrets and disappointments, I was afraid I was going to run out of paper. Some years are like that, but I encourage you to dig deeper to find some accomplishments. Maybe this year wasn't your year to make a lot of money, but were you able to pay all your bills? Or did you find creative ways to have fun that didn't cost any money? Maybe a relationship ended, but did you discover your voice? Did you find yourself standing up for yourself in ways you never have before? Or maybe you've been dealing with an illness or an unwanted diagnosis, and you're doing that with your head held high and your heart open to receive help from others. That's huge, my friend. One of my big accomplishments this year was asking for help when I had to move everything in my storage unit due to a really awful rodent infestation. It was a total nightmare, but I asked for help and got help from a couple friends, and that really made a difference. And for me, asking for help is an accomplishment. If you're having trouble finding your accomplishments, here are some things to look for. Look for any time you took the high road in a situation, any time you forgave someone, any time you spoke a kind word to yourself or someone else. How many books did you read this year? Did you take care of a pet all year? Those go on your list. Are your houseplants still alive? Is your bathroom clean? How many times did you do laundry this year? Is there gas in the car? Did you empty the dishwasher or refill the water reservoir in the Keurig coffee maker when no one was looking? Seriously, sometimes we have to keep it so simple, so basic, as to remind ourselves that, yes, I did get out of bed today, and that is a win. Yes, I did show up and do my job today. How many emails did you respond to this year? How many customers or clients did you help? In what ways did you contribute to your company and fellow employees? What good things have you brought to the world this year? Look for anything you did well, that you felt good about, and that made you smile, and write it down. Let's fill up some pages here. Why are we looking so hard for things you've done this year that feel good? Because when we start to talk about next year, we are going to want to remember what went well so we can build in more of those things. We'll talk about that in a couple weeks. One more thing about accomplishments. I have had years when I have a lot of small accomplishments, but I didn't do anything big. Not all years are Camino years, if you know what I mean. If that's the case for you, remember that thought and how it makes you feel, because we will want to remember it when we get to the third step in the process, which is setting goals for next year. Your goals are what will ensure you don't have another year without anything you are proud of. Are you ready to start writing? Here's how to begin. Take your first piece of paper and fold it in half the long way, so you have 2 columns. At the top of the left column, write the name of a category, like personal, or work, or family, or personal growth. On that right column, write the name of another category. Set up as many pages as you need for however many categories you have, and then start writing in your accomplishments, your wins, your successes, anything you feel good about from this year. Put them on the paper under the appropriate category. Or if you're not a category type of person, you can just take that first piece of paper and start writing, brainstorming style. What if you can't remember anything past the last month or 2? Well, that happens to me every year. So I do this practice with my calendar in hand to remind me of what I did at the beginning of the year. You may also want to carry your list with you this week, so you can add to it throughout the week as you think of more good and great things you did this year. Let's make this a week of celebrating our successes. Okay, that's step number 1 in our year-end, or whenever you do it, process. I will leave you to it now with a reminder to check out the book, Your Best Year Yet, for a full discussion on this process. And I'll be back next week with step number 2. Enjoy celebrating this year. You deserve it.